Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ingrid Sidadinoto, the Senior Director of Global Solutions, UPS. And I have here with me Lisa Feng, Customer Solutions Director for UPS Asia Pacific. At UPS, I oversee international customer solutions engagement in all UPS territories outside of the United States. This includes strategic supply chain management and analysis, collaboration with business development, and developing and implementing strategic directions and initiative for UPS international sales opportunities and customer solutions. So over to Lisa right now to talk about her role.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lisa, Customer Solution Director for UPS Asia Pacific. I lead the solution team that provides consultative services and create innovative end-to-end supply chain solutions that are tailored to specific customers' needs. I also have the program management function, which offers logistic advisory and support to UPS enterprise customers in the region. So now back to Ingrid for the first part of our presentation.
Okay, so let's move on to the next slide for the agenda. So we're here today to talk about navigating supply chain disruption amid the coronavirus pandemic and share what businesses can do both in the short and long term to sustain and even grow operationally. I'd like to first extend my thanks to the Singapore Chinese Chamber of Commerce and Industry for giving us the opportunity to present our perspective on what is currently happening and to provide clarity on some concerns that business owners and decision makers may have in this current period of uncertainty. UPS enables commerce around the globe. We are present in more than 220 countries and territories worldwide. And during exceptional times such as this, we continue to remain committed to serve our customers in all regions by leveraging our network, except where constrained by government restrictions. So let's go to the next slide. So the coronavirus has disrupted the world in unprecedented manner. Apart from its immense physical, mental, and social impact on individuals, families, and communities, we need to also consider the disease's far-reaching and enduring impacts on economic and supply chains around the world. With around 200 countries and territories already reporting cases of the coronavirus disease, and given our increasing interconnectedness, the impact of this pandemic will continue to be felt by big and small businesses alike in the next few months or maybe even years. As cities and countries go into lockdown, businesses are faced with new realities in supply chains and cross-border tradings. The most apparent disruptions to a business as usual state would be the closing of non-essential businesses, physical stores, and reduced air freight capacity. We're also seeing a dynamic situation that requires close monitoring. What we initially saw in China is now being experienced by the rest of Asia, Europe, and even now in Americas. So to the next slide, what are the current realities faced by importers and exporters? So first, let's take a look at what we know. So if you go to the next slide, Fiba, thank you. So the coronavirus disease has had a larger impact than any outbreak in recent history. More so because China is more integrated in the global economy and is a large importer of major commodities. When China is affected, its largest trading partner, the US, Europe, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand will also be affected. A survey of 3,000 suppliers in China conducted by professors from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology indicated that half of the respondents did not expect to be at full capacity until the end of March, while the rest anticipate a much longer recovery to full capacity. Industries in China are on the path to restarting, and significant production volume is not expected until the end of April. In the US, close to 10 million people have filed for unemployment in the last 2 weeks of March alone, with the scale and speed of layoffs without precedent, indicating that the economic impact of the coronavirus is much worse than what the analysts have expected. Meanwhile, Europe remains divided on how the region should respond to the economic fallout caused by the coronavirus disease. Okay, next slide. More recently, the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs stated that the global economy could decline by 1% in 2020, with the pandemic disrupting global supply chain and international trade. Nearly 100 countries have closed off their national borders, with operations of commercial airlines to and from cities across Asia Pacific, Europe, Africa, and the Americas either reduced or suspended altogether. Amid the current scenario, UPS has been designated as critical infrastructure by the US government and many other governments globally. As such, operations continue as normal in most regions. UPS continues to deliver to locations worldwide where permitted. We continue to serve customers around the globe with a combination of more than 500 UPS and chartered aircraft. So let's take a look at the situation for each region. First and foremost, for any healthcare and medical device businesses that we might be speaking to today, do note that medical and healthcare shipments are being prioritized or strictly regulated in most major markets. In China, government-issued documentation is required for the export of medical supplies. While in the EU, export authorization from an EU member state is required for the export of personal protective equipment to protect the availability of supplies during the pandemic. Businesses in these industries need to ensure proper documentation to avoid any unnecessary shipment delays. So for businesses in other segments, if we go to the next slide, let's take a look at the wider landscape of air freight in Asia Pacific, starting with Singapore. We are 1 week into circuit breaker measures implemented on 7 April to slow the rate of community spread of the virus. Only essential businesses, including those in logistics, banking and finance, and F&B for takeaway orders are allowed to operate. Like many other global airlines, Singapore's national carrier, Singapore Airlines, has ground the majority of its fleet and cut capacity by 96% due to the low travel demand and travel bans. And also, starting from May 1st, Changi Airport will suspend the operation at Terminal 2 for 18 months, citing that passenger traffic and air travel demand will not return to the pre-pandemic levels in the near term. The implication of this closure is that common carriage air freight capacity for Singapore is expected to remain constrained for over the next few months. Over in mainland China, imported case and asymptomatic patients remain a concern. Passenger flights to major Chinese cities remain suspended until the last week of April. At the very least, and air freight demand continues to be high for US and Europe trade lanes. In the Philippines, the whole island of Luzon has been under enhanced community quarantine from midnight of March 17 until April 30th. The Philippine government has imposed air travel restrictions, with airports in Luzon ceasing all outbound international passenger flights starting from March 20th. Enhanced community quarantine has also been implemented in Cebu, and all flights out of Cebu has been canceled while the quarantine is in effect. UPS continues to operate in the Philippines with some delays. Let's move to India. The country has grounded all domestic and international flights and suspended all tourist visas. The lockdown, unfortunately, has also impacted UPS import operation as well as pickup and delivery services. While UPS continues to operate its daily flights to and from Delhi, only essential goods are allowed for transit. Okay. All of the measures implemented by airlines and governments in response to this pandemic have reduced global air freight capacity by up to 35% as of early April, and capacity is expected to decline further. As a result, while shipments generally continue, you can expect delays as so much capacity supply has been taken out of the market. But essential goods and supplies still must be transported to where they are needed. So next, let's also take a look at the status of ocean freight in APEC. Major carriers are canceling some 30 sailing this April on the Asia North Europe, Asia Mediterranean, Asia US West Coast, and Asia-US East Coast routes. These capacity cuts are adjustments made in response to the lockdown occurring in markets across the globe. The current short notice period, spanning only a few days, is out of the industry norm. Carriers typically announce blank sailing approximately about 3 to 4 weeks in advance. This has caused many businesses to seek for shipping alternatives urgently. For Singapore, our port remains open for cargo and marine services, including shipyard repairs. As for demand, port container volumes were up 5.8% in February, based on data from the Singapore Maritime and Port Authority. This indicates a likely increase in ocean freight demand as a result of the reduced air freight capacity. However, as the circuit breaker measures have been put in place for the month of April and most non-essential businesses have been asked to suspend operation, ocean freight space capacity and demand may plummet during this period. Turning to the Philippines, we're also seeing an increase in ocean freight demand due to reduce of air freight capacity. However, consignees are finding it difficult to retrieve their cargo from Manila's container ports due to the lockdown, and turnaround times for containers have increased. There may be a potential of port shutdown since the yard utilization is almost at 100%, which would further hamper the limited movement of goods in and out of Metro Manila. So let's now take a look at Europe. What we are seeing are varying degrees of lockdown and border controls, but we do have plans in place to minimize the impact for our customers. The borders between Spain and Portugal are closed, with employees having to work from home. However, UPS Ocean Freights has been running without constraint and has seen smoother brokerage processes. Air freight is working with restrictions and some delays. In France, medical experts have put forward a 4-week extension request for the lockdown. Payment of taxes and the conduct of audits have been postponed. Despite the situation, UPS has no backlog in operations or custom. Germany has enacted partial and regional restriction to the public. UPS's service continues with air freight working with restriction and some delays, while ocean freight is constrained. Switzerland is in lockdown, but its production industry continues to run. Air and ocean are working with restriction, and UPS plans to add 3 additional line haul trucks between Zurich and Frankfurt. In the Nordic, more companies are closing or reducing staff and availing of governmental support package. Denmark is currently on lockdown, while air and ocean operations in Sweden are operating as normal. Meanwhile, in the United Kingdom, UPS continues to operate normally. For Europe and beyond, we are constantly monitoring the air and ground networks to address potential sources of disruption in our network. We are also complying with all government regulation and health and safety guidelines related to the containment of the coronavirus. Let's move on to North America. The US Department of Homeland Security named UPS as part of the critical infrastructure industry. And as such, despite varying degrees of lockdown measures across states, our operations continue and service is continuing normally. Air freight in the US remains fully operational, and UPS currently has no backlogs. Ocean freights in the US is also fully operational, and there are no instances of port congestion or backlogs. Rail and ground services are also fully operational. The situations around the regions all point to a decreased capacity for shipping. In line with the reduction of commercial flights, this in turn could also mean longer lead times for shippers. We are also expecting increasing shipping costs to and from all regions as a result of the increased demands for air freight capacity and increased costs to maintain service. The questions perhaps on your mind would be, what can I do then? How will all this affect me as business owner or as business that is part of the global supply chains? How can I make sure I'm still able to deliver on customer satisfaction despite the current situation? How do I take steps to ensure my business survive in these times? So next slide. Observing what has been happening in the last few weeks around the world that we have seen, the challenges and trends facing businesses are: number one, reduce air freight capacity. Number two, the closures of retail shops. Three, e-commerce fulfillment changes. Four, the workforce that now have to work remotely. Five, shifting production offshore. And six, increase in demand for critical healthcare products. Many business leaders and owners are wondering how to keep their business moving. You may be considering different suppliers, different markets for products, different business models, or even different products in adjusting to the new normal. In the short term, the most important thing for businesses to be is to try to be as flexible as possible. Given a constantly evolving global situations, business needs to be agile and be open to previously unexplored options to ensure business continuity. This could mean considering express options when previously all cargo moved solely via freight. This could also mean considering directly shipping to customer instead of utilizing freight forwarding, given that no common carriages are available, and customers still need their products to arrive within an acceptable lead times. In the longer run, one of the most critical action points for businesses is to foster collaborative relationship with business partners and critical suppliers to minimize the disruption and to create a more resilient supply chain in the future to avoid being caught off guard with subsequent disruptions. And that said, it is imperative for business today to work with a trusted logistic partner now that can help them navigate dynamic and uncertain situations such as this time. While the disruptions in the supply chain caused by the pandemic have presented many businesses with challenges, we also see opportunities for businesses that manage to keep their supply chain moving and survive through this period. Earlier, we identified the 6 key challenges for businesses that we are seeing. Now, I will handle the time over to Lisa to share with you the ways in which UPS has been helping businesses to adjust to their current realities. Lisa?
Thanks, Ingrid. To address the solution that business can adopt, the most surprising one is to work around reduce the air freight capacity. There's countrywide lockdown and restrictions on commercial air travel that have significantly reduced common carriage air freight capacity, presenting shippers with limited options. However, the demand for air cargo space remains for various reasons, including increased demand for cross-border e-commerce, which I will touch on that shortly, the restart of China's industry, and the flow of critical goods and services, including healthcare shipments. Next slide, please. Okay, so our continued flight operations are helping business, especially those in healthcare, continue operating. For business in other industry, we offer a wide range of solutions, including worldwide express freight as a viable alternative to freight forwarding using common carriers. A recent example of how we have helped a customer in the face of reduced air freight capacity is with a customer in the healthcare technology sector based out of Singapore. This customer produces diagnostic equipment and clinical test kits and traditionally ship to temperature cargoes with freight forwarders. However, as a result of the capacity crunch and soaring demand of its products, it switched to UPS worldwide express freight services instead, yielding time in transit saving and faster turnaround time for their critical healthcare supplies. So this underscores the importance of being open to explore new alternatives, especially since common carriage space is limited during this period. Also, since many logistic providers have imposed the daily tonnage cap to ensure operations can still flow smoothly, business should plan ahead and adopt the best practice of spreading their volume load across a few days to ensure their cargo reaches to consignee on time. Second, we have seen the closure of retail shops. We have seen many companies big and small alike accelerate their pivot to a digital channel to ensure that operation continue in the face of restrictions imposed by the governments around the world. To be able to effectively operate and ship on e-commerce channel means business must ensure they have the right tools to support their consumers. This can leverage a logistic provider with solutions to allow for greater visibility, flexibility, and automation. Next slide, please. Okay, so third, e-commerce fulfillment change that Ingrid has mentioned just now. It could be that manufacturing has slowed down or stopped altogether, or products that have been already manufactured that are still waiting to be shipped. It may also be the case that suppliers are located in affected areas or that there's shortage of materials or products that may make current e-commerce inventory become more difficult and costly. So our solution allows business to streamline process or provide alternatives to current business models to try and maintain sense of normalcy during this period. Business could consider that UPS Guardian model, as you may heard about that, which allows business owners to ship directly to consumer. For small and medium enterprise, we have solutions to improve the overall e-commerce customer experience, including marketplace fulfillment solutions. So we have an example of how UPS have been helping business improve e-commerce fulfillment in facing the supply chain disruptions. One example is a Philippine-based customer with shipping requirements to US, Canada, Australia, and Europe as a suppliers for an established London-based apparel e-commerce merchant. We implemented Guardian model to this customer, creating savings for export declaration fee. We also use a combination of visibility tool to automate the shipping process and provide a better buying experience for their end customers. So this has not only to cost the saving of up to $50,000 annually, but also help to secure an additional revenue for these customers. For many companies today experiencing cash flow shock, this should be a much needed shot in arm. So we recognize that different companies are grappling with unique challenges during this period, and our supply chain experts in UPS are ready to discuss shipping solutions to help guide business to navigate current problems faced. Next slide, please. Fourth, as many of you are experiencing, a huge numbers of workforce that are working remotely. Since employees have been working off-site, ensuring the business activities are accessible from home and continue to run smoothly is the top priority. Business should partner with a logistic provider that offer a web-based solution that meet their needs. At UPS, we offer a range of plug-and-play web-based solutions that allow for visibility, flexibility of access to information, as well as billing solutions to meet specialized business requirement. Next one, please. So business that are facing with possibility of moving production offshoring, a short-term response to many business would be pivot available inventory away from affected areas, so that these products could be assessed for shipping. Moreover, business could also look into developing a tier 2 and a tier 3 supplier relationship to secure supplies and available assembling capacity as a backup solutions. Next slide, please. Having a logistic partner that can provide alternative viewpoints and suggest unexplored options to grow our business resilience is crucial. Our supply chain experts that are ready to assist and collaborate with business to identify alternatives that they could take now or longer term. Our team can also assist business with addressing custom roadblocks or take advantage of free trade agreements. Lastly, given the current global health crisis, we're seeing an increasing demand for critical healthcare products. The World Health Organization that state that the coronavirus response necessitated a global increase in production and shipping of protective equipment and medical supplies. UPS has a wide range of service specialized for transporting healthcare products around the world. We have a dedicated UPS Healthcare Life Science Solution team based in Singapore to provide end-to-end healthcare supply chain solution for companies across Asia Pacific region and beyond. Solutions for healthcare include supply chain management, cold chain, global transportation, and other healthcare service operations. Through these solutions, we are enabling the transport of critical healthcare products to where they are needed at most. As I mentioned earlier, one of our customers based in Singapore, we deployed the solutions to help them not only to yield time in transit saving, but also giving a faster turnaround time for their supplies. This is just one of the many ways in UPS is helping business and communities around the globe during this period of time. In the current global pandemic, managing supply chain can be best done to the business that have flexibility to make adjustment to the new normal. Next slide, please. Okay, so the fact that UPS operate in over 220 countries and territories worldwide are relies heavily on open borders have meant that we are particularly imposed to the effects of both the pandemic itself as well as the measures governments have put in place to address it. Despite of these challenges, we are very proud that because of our global reach, we are playing a critical role in helping to win this war against the virus. The services we offer play a pivotal role in ensuring that time-critical shipment, whether life-saving medical supplies or pieces of urgent essentials equipment repairs, reach their destination safe and on time. To this end, we have ensured the continuity of our air and ground network by working with governments on exemptions to restrictions. Most governments designated our services as essential, including in Singapore. And so we are allowed to continue to deliver every day. Having been granted these exceptions, we recognize that we have both privilege and responsibility as an essential service to continue operating during this challenging period of time. We take this responsibility seriously, and we take steps to ensure that safety to our staff as well as the customers and consignees, such as equipping our drivers with masks and protective equipment and doing away with signature on deliveries in line with social distancing measures. To combat the virus on the global stage, we are among the first to ship personal protective equipment, so-called PPE. And sent over 4 million masks to relief workers in China. UPS and UPS Foundation have been working with the companies and agents across the public and private sectors to transport test kits, PPE, critical supplies to where they are needed. The battle ranges on, and it is critical that government and the private sector continue working together to keep trade alive and keep supply chains moving to turn the tide against the virus. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in the hopefully not too distant future, when the war is won, business will begin to pick up the pace and take stock. Taking the long view in a post-coronavirus world means revisiting business continuity plan and preparing for the next black swan with such far-reaching effects. More than ever, business will need to focus on supply chain resilience, starting with improving supply chain visibility and identifying new risk and cost. Supply chain will still factor in traditional metrics such as cost, quality, and timeline. But today, it is also to look at resilience, reconfigurability, and repositiveness. This means conducting supply chain risk assessment, identifying where and when disruption may likely occur, anticipating how governments will react, and prioritizing critical focus areas. Next slide, please. Okay, so a diverse supplier network must be established, with business identifying alternative suppliers to be activated. Automated and digital processes should also be put in place, enabling greater visibility, collaboration, and optimization. Preparing for the next black swan ultimately means business needs to consider more than business as usual scenarios. This includes collaborating with trusted partners that have network capacity, wide range of solutions that could actively respond to or even predict potential disruptions, ultimately allowing for increased flexibility. Next slide, please. So thank you very much. This brings us to the end of our presentation today. I hope you have found our presentation useful. Ingrid and I will be glad to take your questions.
Thanks, Ingrid and Lisa, for sharing those insights on navigating the supply chain. So as Zexon had mentioned, you can post your questions in the Q&A section. That's right in the top panel of the Zoom window. Now, in the meantime, Zexon had, I think, some of the attendees had shared some of the questions beforehand. So, I'll just touch upon one of those questions, which I found quite interesting. And I think this is like a natural continuation to all that has been discussed. I guess everybody right now in this webinar would be thinking about, what happens next. Everybody would be anxious to know when and how all of this disruption is going to end. So probably, Ingrid, the question that I would probably pose to you is, what is in next for the industry after the COVID-19 pandemic? How quickly will the global supply chains recover in your point of view?
Okay, so I really think right now we haven't really felt the full impact of the pandemic, both locally and globally. So I think it's a bit too premature right now to talk about recovery, right? But I think the most important thing that businesses needs to think about is what is the near future next step. And no two businesses are alike. There's always some nuances that makes different businesses runs differently. And that is also why I think it's important for businesses to take a look at their current supply chain and look at the impact of all this pandemic and start thinking about, okay, so with the situation that we have currently, what should we change in the near future so that the business can remain afloat, right? Because I think we need to focus on that near future solution first. And that could mean talking to a logistic provider that can support you, logistic provider that has all the information about the situation around the world, so that you can start thinking about how to be flexible. If in the past you've always used air freight to move your goods to, let's say, North America, and you use an existing marketplace to fulfill your order, maybe you need to start thinking, well, now there's a reduced common carriage out there. That means freight forwarding, air freight forwarding is not going to be as available. Then to ensure that your customer will still be able to get your goods, then start thinking about, okay, you might want to consider express. You might want to consider sending them direct to the customer. Then you started having to understand, so what is the FTA with US? what can be of interest to your products based on the value of your product if you were to ship directly to consumer in this time where you might not be able to use freight forwarding to move to an existing marketplace. So those are some of the things that I think needs to be dealt with. The key item is still how to be nimble and flexible and find opportunities to fix the situation so that you can adjust to the current reality, basically. That's what I would say, Fiba.
So I guess what you're saying is, sort of be agile, kind of sense which way the wind is blowing, look at various opportunities out there, and probably work closely with the your logistics partner, whoever they may be, to sort of figure an alternate way out, because there's always a way out.
Right.
Excellent. Okay. So the other question that I'm seeing pop up in here is probably something which is closer to home, and probably I'll send this across to Lisa. So the question that I'm seeing is, so what is your view of the current market situation in Singapore? And do you expect the economic slowdown of COVID-19 to persist beyond 2020?
Okay, thanks, Vibha. I think everybody now is working at home. I already can estimate what is the impact for Singapore, right? So yesterday there was almost 400 cases has been reported. So I guess the virus has impacted many aspects of Singapore economy, including, the sectors which we had already touched on early, like airline, logistic industry, including freight forwarders. But there's like multiple stimulate packages that has been announced by the Singapore government as part of the budget for 2020. So amounting this is close to Singapore 60 billions to support business, protect the jobs in the challenging economic situations. So at UPS, we are committed to helping our customers through these challenges as time. So UPS, as said, is we have been already identified as essential business. So we're still operating, our network are still on, our drivers are still delivering the packages. So based on the local government advisory, the full impact of the coronavirus is yet to be felt both in Singapore locally or in Asia or anywhere globally. So the pandemic situation remains very fluid. Business that should recalibrate their business in the interim to deal with this new normal in the near term, and we can use this so-called circuit breaker period as a time to rebuild capability in anticipating for recovery, including how are we gonna utilize this period of time to fully giving assessment of our current supply chain, including strengthening our logistic processes. Okay, back to you, Vibhav.
Hey, thanks, Lisa. So some of the other questions that I am seeing over here, which I can answer myself. One of the questions is, how do I contact the speakers? So just wanted to share with everybody that, the screen that we have put up, you can see email address, which is sgsne@ups.com. You can use this email address to sort of get in touch with us, drop us a message, and we'd be happy to connect you to the speakers, or if you have a specific question about UPS or about how your UPS can work with your business, feel free to reach out to us. If all else fails, do reach out to SCCCI, and I'm sure Zexon will be happy to patch you through. One other question that I am seeing over here, and probably Ingrid, I'll send this your way. This is pretty interesting, and I'm thinking that many people are thinking about this, which is, will UPS start using drones to do delivery to customers in Singapore for small parcels?
Well, so UPS has been working with drones, and we were actually the first flight operator that was given the flight with flight forwarders to be able to given the drone operators in North America. I think when it comes to drone, it's still something that definitely we're doing. We're doing some with healthcare products, healthcare companies in US. We are not quite there yet in Singapore, I don't think. but it's something that we internally are looking for. And I really think that it would be something that people used to feel like, oh, it's cool to know, but it's kind of out there. Maybe we're not quite ready yet. But I really think that what has been happening now that we're all working from home, there's limitation of, us even meeting with customers. One of the things that we are trying to do is using a technology such as drone and other types of technology that will allow us to do some solutioning, like warehouse redesign to our customer contract logistic or warehousing, so that we can give them more solutions to improve their warehousing by using drones. So instead of sending our engineers to do that work, we are making use of drones in some part of the world, not yet in Singapore. So if anyone is interested in doing that, definitely please contact the email address that FIBAF has shared. But it's certainly something that we are looking more closely to speed up, because with the current situation, it is not nice to have, it's a must have, right? So that's something that I would say on the drone usage, FIBA.
Hey, thanks, Ingrid. That sounds very exciting, actually. Okay, let me see what's the other question. Okay, I think one of the other questions that is popping up is, are we seeing any changes in the sort of shipments that we are receiving? Are we seeing any changes to the consumer demand, especially in Asia Pacific? So probably, I guess, Lisa, if you could share some insights on, are we seeing any changes in the sort of shipments that we are receiving already, since China has opened up already?
Yeah, I think we actually shared that in the PowerPoint when in the presentation. I guess this was posted early. So as mentioned during the presentation, right? So globally, healthcare and medical related shipments are being prioritized. This is to, send it to where are needed, where we're saving people's life. So as many cities go into lockdown, and we're seeing sustained demand for basic necessities. So according to the Global Web Index, there is like a large purchases, impulse buyers who will be deprioritized as household or offices purchase critical supplies for the near term. As said, every company would be different in its response. And if you are evaluating the impact to your supply chain, I would encourage you to get in touch with UPS supply chain expertise. You can send us the email or contact us with the email that we just shared. We will be able to do a virtual, even though we're keeping the social distancing, but we'll be able to do a virtual assessment to your whole company situation and giving you recommendations.
Thanks, Lisa. Okay, so all right, so I'm going to read this question almost verbatim. So it says, kudos to running the pivotal operations during this period. However, there might be other competitors who are providing similar sort of a solution. So what would you consider to be UPS's competitive edge? And basically, I think if I were to sort of rephrase this, it comes down to what is it about the UPS solutions and what we are providing to our customers that is a bit different from probably what's out there already. So maybe Lisa, since you kind of handle Asia Pacific, I'll hand this over to you. So what's different about UPS solution right now in Asia Pacific?
Okay, so I think there is one key differences that UPS do business versus the competition is we focus on bringing values to business by first understanding what they really need and offering a customized one-stop solutions. So we know that every business is different. Even for a big enterprise or SMEs, we all do business in a unique way. So for each of our customers, we look at their entire supply chain and we find areas where the value-added service can be applied to make their business more efficient, right? So in selected countries, including, say, for example, Singapore, Malaysia, that UPS offers domestic service, so which makes us a one-stop solution for all your business needs. So we offer domestic delivery, including UPS Express, Express Saver Domestic, providing all the logistic services at business with operations in both Singapore and Malaysia where are needed. So this is to reduce your time spent on managing multiple providers for international and also domestic delivery, and improves the security of your shipment as well. So yes, again, there's many solutions that UPS are offering, from freight forwarding to Express Plus to time definite express services. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. I'm sure our solution and sales expertise will be able to answer you in a more customized, giving you a more customized solution to that.
All right, so I guess, thanks, Lisa, that should kind of address that point. Ingrid, I'm seeing one more question which could probably be best addressed by you, and this is talking more about B2B. So, I think Lisa spoke about some of the options that we can use for B2C e-commerce for last mile delivery. And the question over here is, let me read this verbatim. So any comments on last mile delivery solutions for B2B during this period? And any comments on some safe best practices for last mile delivery?
Okay, so for specifically to the last mile delivery, because of this pandemic, one of the things that I could share that we also have done to protect our employees as well is the contactless delivery. So now, if you remember getting a packages, normally you will be asked to sign on our diet board, and it's similar to any other provider for that matter. Now, since we have this concern about hygiene and whatnot, we no longer ask the person to actually sign on our equipment, and that is globally done to make sure that we address the situation of hygiene and protecting our employees as well. As far as the last mile delivery for B2B, so because in most part, unless it is restricted by government, such as the case right now, unfortunately for India, we are still operating per normal. So as long as the B2B companies, the production is still running, we are still making normal pickup and making normal delivery. The one that I think is probably something to consider for companies that are using B2B model right now, if there is a constraint where your B receiver is now no longer working because of the lockdown, because there is varying degree of lockdown, then another thing to be considered is certainly the B2C model. Is that an option for you? Is that something that would help your end consumer to be able to still get your product because of the constraint in the B receiving in your probably prior B2B2C situation? So I would say that would be what would be the best thing for us to do, is to consider different mode of delivering, or knowing which countries, which state, even in US, have different lockdown regulations, so that you can know what can and what cannot be done, and what can move and what can't move. Because from the provider perspective, we are still operating per normal as long as we are able to be to do so within regulation, as we are seen as critical, essential operation, basically.
Thanks, Ingrid. I guess another question which probably I could answer is, let me read this. So, are you able to ship products from Slovenia to Indo-China market, like Cambodia, Vietnam, and other export restricted countries, I suppose? So, well, I would say that all our service updates are already posted on our ups.com website. At the same time, all the service options are already available on the UPS website. So you can just feel free to go to our website, and you'll be able to see all the service impacts. So in fact, on a weekly, or actually on a daily basis, as soon as we see any service impact, whether it is because of a closure of the the import or export, as in the case of India that Ingrid spoke about, or any other situation, we update that almost immediately on our website as well. Okay. The other question that I found, which was quite interesting, was, I think the question was, and I'm probably I'll send it to Lisa. So Lisa, you shared, I think, a couple of customer case studies during this presentation, and we see a question of, what are the various solutions that can be applied to some of the customers in the existing scenario. If you have any other customer sort of success story or case study to share with this audience, which probably they could relate to, that'd be helpful.
Sure. Okay, so I give you another example. So everybody is buying at home. I started buying from Zalora, which I never did before, right? So I guess everybody is doing e-commerce. So we actually work with a company locally, which has a very strong Southeast Asia presence. So that they sell fashions and footwear merchandise. I'm not gonna mention their name, but we conducted a supply chain mapping session, which is one of the UPS solution expertise offering to them. So we identified their needs for streamline shipment or shipping processes and solutions which are enable their end customer, their buyers, to view the shipping rate and transit time when they are buying from these e-commerce sellers. So for example, that we implemented a shipping API into the customer website so that they can automatically generate and print shipment labels to keep us with their high shipment volumes. And this provides accuracy and saves the business man hours, the labor cost they spend on logistic management. We also did another things, which is on rating and tracking APIs. So that will give the customers the choice for a time definite delivery for the shipment, and also they can easily track it through the buyer's website without even going to ups.com. So that's one of the examples I could think about for now. If you are doing web-based e-commerce, if you are selling things online, probably you can consider getting a similar solution to be deployed so that you can actually save the cost, improve the visibility, and ultimately improve your end customer's experience. Vibhav?
Thank you, Lisa. So, okay, well, there are a few comments for SCCI. Thank you for bringing a fantastic webinar. So, thank you, SCCI. Okay. Sorry, let me just go through it. I'd seen an interesting one over here. Okay, probably Ingrid, I think I remember what it was. So it basically asked about the current congestion in the air freight network, which is seen globally. And the question that they had asked, that the attendee had asked was, is UPS seeing any sort of similar congestion, or probably we can expand that question to the whole market. So in the freight market, are we seeing a lot of congestion and sort of cargo buildup, especially since the capacity has gone down and some of the countries are just opening up?
Yeah, so definitely, and that's why that flexibility that we talked about before is important, because typically freight forwarding has to depend on common carriage. And as less and less common carriage are flying, our Singapore Airlines in Singapore itself has reduced capacity so much, right? And so those are some of the capacity that we typically use for our freight forwarding. So even for UPS, we offer both express air freight and ocean freight. We also rely a lot on those common carriages for our air freight movement. And because of that, we have to be flexible and work with our customers to make sure that they are able to see the options out there. As far as congestion, so I think in different places, in different markets, there's different congestion. There are some areas that we don't see any congestion yet, like UK is still operating per normal. US is not seeing any congestion as far as air freight and ocean freight. But now we're seeing congestion in Manila, for example. We're seeing the fact that the common carriage that goes in and out of major cities in China are still not operating until end of April. And because of that, there is a need to look at different options to moving goods. Ocean freight, because everything is impacted, right? So ocean freight starting to remove all their sailings, and because of that, even those shipper that move from air freight to ocean freight, because there's a crunch in capacity in air freight, now also have to find alternatives, and the notification for the change in sailing now has become shorter and shorter. And so that goes back to the case that, you know, it is a very short webinar, so unfortunately I don't think we can answer everything, but that is why it's so important, and that's why we're here, to be able to at least give some kind of information that we know of operating in a global network, so that we can work personally with your company to know exactly how to go forward from here. I think there's a lot of concerns going around currently. I think I saw a question about, you know, how to make sure that the shipments that people are getting are also sanitized, right? How do we make sure, how does UPS make sure that we do that? So the likelihood of an infected person contaminating commercial goods is low, and the risk of catching the virus that causes the COVID-19 from a package that has been moved or traveled, exposed to different conditions, temperature, is also low. But in UPS, for example, we have substantially increased the cleaning and disinfecting services throughout our facilities. Non-operation have been working from home, so that we are not impacting the operation that really is critical to be working at the operation. Our vehicles and equipment are cleaned and disinfected daily, with an emphasis on the interiors and frequent exterior touch points. So those are some of the stuff that I wanted to bring up, because I think there's a lot of people who are concerned about that matter right now. So back to you, Fiba.
Yeah, in fact, yeah, Ingrid, in fact, I think a sort of an associated question also is, you know, is UPS seeing any sort of staff shortages? And, you know, especially since, you know, there's a lot of churn in the sector. You know, and I mean, we have always helped people as our biggest strength. So probably, Ingrid, you know, if you could sort of give a global context on, you know, the UPS people, and, you know, how are we dealing with the situation in terms of people?
Right. So certainly there is impact on people. I mean, just take a look at Singapore, right? The measure where now we can't move from Johor to Singapore, that impacts resources big time. We have a lot of our employees who are residing there, and now they're unable, they have to choose, right? Whether they come here and not see their families for, we don't know how long, or they stay there and they can't operate. And that's also why UPS at times in different countries, we also work with different outside service providers to do the right thing, so that we can still meet our customer expectation. At the same time, globally, we've been, not just in Asia, but in Europe, in US, we've been focusing a lot and investing a lot in automation, which then allow us to scale up and scale down based on the requirement and based on the resources that we have. Because truthfully, we know that the resources is very important, but we also have to make sure that we have alternative, knowing that that could be an issue right now. So we are managing that portion, FIBA globally. We have yet to see any operations in any parts of the world where we don't have enough resources to do our operation. And we are continuously working per normal, as long as the government allows us to do so.
Absolutely, and you know, just sort of adding in, you know, wearing my Singapore country hat, I can say that, you know, as Ingrid mentioned, you know, we have our people in place, as well as, you know, we are working very closely with our partners, as you know, we shared in this presentation as well. You know, work closely with your partners during this period, so that, you know, you can better align your needs as well as to the situation. So, you know, at UPS, we are doing the same thing, and because of that, you know, despite the disruptions in the environment, we are continuing to serve the communities that we are present in. Okay, probably I think this is going to be the you know, capstone question, and again, probably you know, Ingrid, I'll pose this question to you. Is you know, if we had to give like one final advice to everybody on this webinar, you know, one big takeaway from today's webinar, what should it be for everybody attending this webinar?
Okay, so I think before we wrap it up, because we're kind of over a lot already. So one thing I would say, be flexible, be open-minded, so that talk to us. We're not here to push products. Seriously, we're trying to help the businesses stay afloat, because when the business stay afloat, our business stay afloat. It's really as simple as that. So I would encourage everyone who is in this webinar to contact us so that we can help you more customize to your real needs, as no two businesses are like. That would be it. Thanks, Fiba.
Thank you, Ingrid and Lisa. And I think, Zexon, I think while there are a few more questions, I think it'll be appropriate for everybody's time that we end here. To all of you out there, if you still have questions, just feel free to write to us at sgsme@ups.com, and we'll be happy to address them individually.